The apostles of the blessed beauty of Abha Baha'u'llah were 19 early followers of him, the King of Glory. They were designated as such by the beloved guardian Shoghi Effendi in the early half of the 20th century, and the list was included in the Baha'i World Volumes 3, page 80 and 81. These apostles of Baha'u'llah in Persian and Arabic are called the Hawariyun, the apostles of Baha'u'llah. They played a vital role in the development of the Baha'i faith, consolidating the believers and bringing the teachings to the entire world, around the world, not only the Middle East or the Far East. To Baha'is, they filled a similar role as the sons of Jacob, the apostles of Jesus, Muhammad's companions, or the beloved Bab's letters of the living. Many of the stories of the apostles of Baha'u'llah are well known to Baha'is, but mostly to Middle Eastern Baha'is or Persian Baha'is. So starting, I'd like to say that the first of these, and I have posted a picture of the 19 that the beloved guardian created this picture, and I've posted it on my page as well as Baha'i History page on Facebook. The first of these at the top is Mirza Musa Aghay Kalim, the steadfast brother of the Blessed Beauty. Now, in our last Zoom meeting, we were talking about Mirza Musa Aghay Kalim. I don't know how many of you are aware that the title Aghay Kalim, Kalim means the one who conversed with God. That is the title of His Holiness Moses, who conversed with God through the burning bush on Mount Sinai, Mount Carmel. So the second in the list is Badi, or his name actually was Mirza Agha Buzurg Neishapuri, Mirza Agha Buzurg Neishapuri, also known by the title of the Pride of Martyrs, the 17-year-old who delivered Baha'u'llah's tablet to Nasiruddin Shah Qajar and was subsequently martyred. Now, I'd like to tell you a little bit about each apostle of Baha'u'llah, each of the Hawariyun. I don't want to skip Mirza Musa Aghay Kalim. There are so many stories of him. And I read many pages, even on internet, you can read about him. But let me tell you a little bit about Badi. When he was about 15 or maybe 16, eminent early Baha'i Nabil Azam, Nabil Mazandarani, the historian who produced the narrative of Nabil, who later the beloved guardian named the Dawnbreakers. Nabil went to Khorasan and was a guest in the house of Badi's father. And they were wealthy because they were owners of mines of precious stones called turquoise. And there was a meeting, let's call it a fireside perhaps, a Baha'i meeting. And Nabil noticed that the gentleman, the host of the house, was serving tea with his shaking hands, old man. And Nabil approached the gentleman and says, "But surely you have servants." The man said, "This is Badi's father." He says, "But the pleasure, the honor is mine to serve." So Nabil insisted and said, "But you have a son How come he's not here to help you? And the gentleman said, well, my son is not interested in topics of faith and religion, and he want, I cannot bring him. And Nabil asked him, where is he? He says, well, look out there. He's under those trees in the garden, sitting there, bored. Nabil asked if he could go and talk to the young man. And the father said, of course, you may do as you like with him. So Nabil went and said to the young man, Mirza Agha Buzurg Neshapuri, he says, why don't you come and help your dad? He's serving tea. And the young man says, oh, I'm not interested. And they had a conversation. I'm not going to go deep into it, but at one point, Nabil got angry. The young man was pushing Nabil's buttons too much. So Nabil slapped him round the face and grabbed him by the ear and brought him to the meeting. And the father says, oh, my darling son, how come you only have one cheek red? Looking, smiling at Nabil, like you could have given him more. So the young man had to sit and listen to the talks, and it actually affected him, although he had been brought by Nabil by force, but it did make a dent in his mind, And when the meeting was over and Nabil wanted to leave, the father of the boy says, why don't you take him with you in your travels? And it will do him good and teach him. And Nabil did that. So young Badi accompanied Nabil, but at some point, he became so infatuated, so in love with the Baha'i faith and Baha'u'llah, that he couldn't even bear it any longer. And so on foot, he took off without any prior notice and went to Akka, to the presence of the Blessed Beauty. That's a part of course, then from there on, you all know his story of his martyrdom and how he delivered the tablet of the Blessed Beauty to Nasiruddin Shah. Third is Mirza Muhammad Hassan, who was given the title of Sultan al-Shuhada, King of Martyrs of Isfahan. He actually was the Imam Jum'eh Isfahan. I don't know if the Western friends know what the Imam Jum'eh is. Imam Jum'eh is that clergyman who is the top clergy of the town. And on Fridays, he goes to the mosque, he stands in the front and says prayers, and everybody behind him, they copy him, they imitate him. And it is said in Islam, it is believed that if the Imam Jum'eh's prayers are not worthy, if they're not accepted, if they're not sincere, then nobody else's that are standing behind him, their prayers are not accepted either. So, and actually this particular gentleman was the father of our beloved Monir Khanum, the Holy Mother, as Abdul Baha, the beloved master, called her, the wife of Abdul Baha. And there are two brothers who were both beheaded, and the Blessed Beauty named them the twin shining stars, but in Arabic and Farsi, they have beautiful titles that I will mention in a second. Yes, they were beheaded, he and his brother, the beloved of martyrs. So one was the king of martyrs, the younger brother was the beloved of the martyrs. And his name was Mirza Muhammad Hossein, who was given the title of Mahbub Shuhada, the beloved of martyrs. I'm rushing through this because there are 19 of them and we haven't even started yet. Next is Mirza Abul Fazl Golpayegani. His name was actually Abul Fazl, meaning the son of wisdom. And the Blessed Beauty changed with a tiny movement of his pen. He changed the title from the son of wisdom to the son of all wisdoms, Abul Faza'il, multiple wisdoms or plural. He was a famous scholar who traveled as far as the United States of America and wrote a wide range of Baha'i subjects, including extensive amounts of material about the proofs of Baha'u'llah's mission. Actually, 4 of his many, many books, I don't know how many, don't quote me, but 4 of the books are translated into English and some other languages. I even have a couple of them in Spanish. But the most famous of his books is called The Proofs and Prophecies. He was consistently praised by the central figures of the Baha'i faith and Shoghi Effendi. Now, I have to say that when the beloved Western friends would praise him, praise Abul Faza'il Golpaygani, he would burst into tears and cry like a baby. And he couldn't bear it. And one time, in the presence of the beloved Master Abdul Baha, some Western ladies, Baha'i ladies in the Holy Land, were praising Abul Faza'il, and he fainted. He hit the ground. He fell off his chair. He couldn't take it. And the beloved Master Abdul Baha says, ladies, what do you want? You want to kill him? Don't ever praise him in his own presence. He cannot bear it. So I have many stories, but this one is very important. I can't skip this one. I have to tell you. Abul Faza'il, before knowing about the Baha'i faith, he had a great number of students or followers who always accompanied him. And he was going on horse from Tehran to Shah Abdul Azim, where there's a Imamzadeh. It's a town near Tehran that one of the sons of an Imam is buried there. In any case, a descendant of an Imam. And on the way going, his horse lost a shoe. So they stopped in a little village, and there was a blacksmith who attended, to make a new shoe and place it on the horse's leg. So the blacksmith said to Abul Faza'il, "Oh, what a great honor to have an eminent clergyman like you come by here." And Abul Faza'il says, "Oh, you're very kind, Taruf." And then the man says, "I have some questions that I don't know that anybody else can answer, but you could." Abul Faza'il said, "Okay." While he was doing his work, he was asking the questions. He says, "We have a clergyman, a little old mullah, that visits our little village from time to time, and he gives sermons. And he says that God has so many angels that each drop of rain is brought down to the ground by one of these angels from heaven, and the angel goes back up to bring another drop. Is that so?" And Abul Fazl says, "Yes, this is in hadith. It's a Islamic belief that the number of God's angels are beyond imagination, as many as the drops of rain, etc." He says, "Oh, and this clergyman tells us that we should be pure and clean when we pray, and that each word of our prayer is taken to God by one of these angels." And he says, "Yes, that's true. This is also, in Islamic beliefs, that the angels take your prayers to God. And yes, you have to be clean and stand on a clean prayer rug or something similar, what they call a sajjadeh, a prayer rug." So, and he's doing his work, he gets paid, and before they leave, the blacksmith says to Abul Fazl, I have one last question, if I may, please. He says, of course, ask me. He says, then how come if angels will not come unless we're clean, how come it also rains on horse manure? And so Abul Fazl was shocked. He says, my God, what an intelligent question. And so the ones that were accompanying Abul Fazl, they said, oh, this guy must be a Babi. Let us kill him right now. We'll behead him right here. Abul Fazl said, no, leave him alone. He has a valid question. They left. But Abul Fazl went back another day by himself alone, without anyone accompanying him. And he said to the blacksmith, he says, there is no such a mullah that tells you these things. You made those up yourself. And the blacksmith had to admit, he says, yes, I cannot lie to you, yes. And so he says, so where do you get these ideas from? And so they spoke about the Baha'i faith, firesided. And it is interesting that the Blessed Beauty Baha'u'llah has named Abul Fazl the wisest man ever, eternally, past, present, future. No one will hold a candle to his wisdom and his knowledge. So much so that when the Blessed Beauty revealed writings, holy writings and tablets and prayers, after he had been poisoned in Aderne, his hand shook. So he couldn't write as well. And when you look at it, and I have seen photographs of it, it's like scribbles, Nobody, not even the beloved Master Abdul Baha, nobody could read these writings except Abul Fazl. And many times when Baha'u'llah revealed holy writings, he would give them to Abul Fazl so that Abul Fazl would rewrite them nicely so they would be legible. Now, this man, with this degree of wisdom, was taught the faith by someone who was illiterate, a peasant, a blacksmith. And I could talk about Abul Fazl forever. But there's one little other story that I'd like to share with you about him. When he was in the United States, Lua Getzinger was his hostess, and she accompanied him everywhere and arranged meetings, etc. And one night they had gone to a big meeting. I can't remember if it was what kind of a club, what it was, Rotary or something to that effect. But many were in the audience, and Abul Fazl spoke perfect English. And he gave the most wonderful talk about the Baha'i faith. And everybody was infatuated. They were all mesmerized. So when they left, on the way home walking, Lua says, oh, Abul Fazl, you were so perfect. And he says, no, my dear, I can always become better. The sky is the limit. So she says, no, but it was really good. It was perfect. He says, if you really love me, rather than praise me, help me better myself. Tell me where I could actually improve my talk. She says, no, it's important. He says, don't argue. Think, and you will find something that I can actually improve on. And at that point, Lord Getzinger says, well, if you insist, there's one little thing. And he says, okay, tell me. He says, you Persians you speak in such flowery language, You're so insistent. He says, what do you mean? Explain. She says, well, you want to say this is white? You say like the clouds, like snow, like milk, like cotton. You don't have to. We Americans are very intelligent people. All you have to do is say it's white and we believe you. And if you want to say black, it was black. You don't have to say like dark night, like black hair or black eyes or black carbon, just say it was black. He says, oh, that's a wonderful point. She says, you don't mind me telling you that? He says, of course not. I'm grateful to you. I have to remember, I have to make sure that I don't beat around the bush and get to the point and I say, this is white and this is black, without having to bring examples of how white or how black. Okay, they walk a little longer and Abul Fazl says, my dear daughter, Lua, in what instance can you remember when I actually exaggerated and repeated and insisted and brought examples? She says, let me think. I don't remember. And Abu Fazl says, I insisted and repeated, and you don't remember? So you see, friends, we read the writings, once is not enough. Or we hear a talk, once is not enough. We hear, often I have told stories, and my beloved, darling friends come just the day after, not 10 years after, the next day, they say, you told a story about so-and-so, but I don't remember. I say, you don't remember? I say, could you repeat it, please? So that was what Abu Fazl. Next is Mr. Ali Muhammad Varqa, the father of the young 12-year-old martyr Ruhollah Varqa. The two were martyred at the same time for their belief in the Blessed Beauty and the Baha'i faith. Varqa was a hand of the cause of God, posthumously nominated by the beloved Master Abdul Baha. Now, about Varqa, I just want to say about him and his son that before he was martyred, he was pressured to renounce the faith, and he wouldn't. And his executioner says, you can renounce the Baha'i faith and you will be safe, you'll even get an allowance and this and that. He says, no. So the executioner got really angry at the resistance, and so he stabbed Varqa in the chest, in the front, with a big dagger, with a big knife. And he said to Varqa, now how do you feel? And Varqa says, much better than you. And of course, he was martyred in a terrible way. I don't even want to go into it. He was, his limbs were mutilated. But anyway, his young 12-year-old son, Ruhollah Varqa, was also given the chance to renounce the faith. He says, no, I want to go with my father. So they strangled him, they lift him up with a pole, and when he passed away, they put him down back on the floor, and he actually jumped up. And so the executioners were frightened and they escaped. But there's so many beautiful stories of Ruhollah Varqa. I'd like to tell you one before we continue, if we have a little time. Ruhollah Varqa was in the presence of the Blessed Beauty in the Holy Land, and many friends had gathered around the Blessed Beauty, and of course the beloved Master Abdul Baha was present. And at the time, this boy was only 8 years old. And the Blessed Beauty asked him, he called him, he said, Ruhollah Afandi. And the boy jumped to his feet and bowed down before the Blessed Beauty. He says, my Lord. And Baha'u'llah says, so what were you doing today? Were you playing? And Ruhollah says, no, my Lord. I was with these eminent Baha'is in your presence, and we were discussing topics of the Baha'i faith. Oh, Baha'u'llah says, that's interesting. And what were you discussing? Give me and Ruhollah said, progressive revelation. Oh, this is very important, the Blessed Beauty says. So Give me an example of, how you explain progressive revelation. And so Ruhullah says, well, the sun comes out every day. We give it different names at different times of the day. We see it different, but the sun is the same sun. He went into that. And the Blessed Beauty says, but Ruhullah, these are my examples. You have to have your own example. And the boy, very nice, he didn't back down. He says, yes, Lord. Look at this bush. And there was a big bush of red roses there. And the boy says, last year, this bush produced the same rose as this year. But although they are the same rose, but each one has its own entity. And so he explained, he went into progressive revelation using the example of the rose bush. And Baha'u'llah was very content, very happy. And he says, from this day on, everybody should call this young man Janab Muballigh, meaning His Eminency, His Excellency, the teacher. And so Ruhullah was known amongst the early Baha'is as Janab Muballigh. He actually communicated with the Blessed Beauty for 4 more years till his martyrdom by letters. They wrote to one another back and forth because Ruhullah was a fantastic poet and he produced wonderful verses of poetry about the Baha'i faith and about the Blessed Beauty. And there are many other stories of Ruhullah. The beloved daughter of the Blessed Beauty, Baha'i Khanum, the greatest holy leaf, one day called all the boys that were playing in the garden, and Ruhullah there were actually 5 brothers. He had 4 brothers older than him. She called them all to come and have tea with her. And they all went to the presence of Baha'i Khanum, the greatest holy leaf. And Baha'i Khanum asked and said, so she looked at the older boy, not to Ruhullah, his older brother, who was already, in his late teens or early 20s. I'm not sure exactly what age, but he had a slight beard and mustache. So she says, so what were you all doing in Iran? And the boy was totally, like surprised. He didn't say a word, quiet. And Ruhullah jumped in the front, bowed down before Baha'i Khanum and said, my lady, we were teaching the Baha'i faith. She says, oh yeah? But she again looked at the older brother and says, how are you teaching? But he didn't say a word. Again, Ruhullah jumped and says, my lady, I was teaching the faith. And she says, so tell me, young man, how were you teaching the faith? And he says, I would look into the eyes of the person that I want to teach, and I would then know if they are receptive or not, if they have the talent, the capacity or not. She says, what? You look into people's eyes and you know? She says, yes, ma'am, he said. She says, okay, go and look in the eyes of all the boys sitting around in this room and tell me what you discover. He went and looked each one in the eye and came back and sat quietly in his place. He didn't say a word. And Baha'i Khanum asked, so what? So what did you discover? He says, my lady, they're not ready. So she says, come and look me in the eye. And he went in the front and looked Baha'i Khanum in the beautiful eyes. She had very light color eyes like Abdul Baha and their mother, Asiya Khanum was. And he says, my lady, you yourself know this better than anybody else. There's no need for me to teach you. So, and it was famous that people said, in Iran, especially the Muslim clergy, they said, don't ever go by that town where this little boy lives, because although he was at the time only 5 years old, he will convince you of the validity of the claim of the Bab and, and Baha'u'llah, and you'll even give your life. Don't go there. And so a clergyman says, oh, no little Babi boy scares me. He actually went, and Ruhollah saw this clergyman on horse, and he says, what's the hurry, sir? Slow down so we can talk. I invite you to my home to come and have tea. And he says, who are you? And the boy says, I am Ruhollah. He says, oh, that's the title of Jesus Christ, the one who could bring the dead back to life. Ruhollah in Persian and Arabic, it means the Spirit of God. And the boy says, well, if you give me a chance, I can revive you too. So the man on the horse started galloping, but Ruhollah would not give up. He put his hand in the belt of the saddle of the horse, and he was flying with the horseman. And finally, he convinced the horseman to slow down and turn around and come and sit. And they sat and talked, and lo and behold, he actually converted. Now, friends, don't be too shy and say, oh, we Baha'is don't convert. Of course we convert. This is what the beloved guardian said. We want to convert. Mass conversion. Have you heard of that? That expression? This is what we want. We want to convert the entire world. So yes, Ruhollah converted the clergyman. And there are many other stories about Ruhollah, but then I'm not going to be able to finish everybody. Next is Nabila Akbar, because we've had two Nabils, Nabila Akbar and Nabila Azam. Nabila Akbar was Agha Muhammad Qa'ini from the town of Qa'in, appointed a hand of the cause of God after his ascension by the beloved master Abdul Baha. I hope, I pray, I beg God and Baha'u'llah that the Western friends learn to pronounce the master's name, his title, correctly. Abdul Baha, not Dul Baha, but Dul. Anyway, he was also known as Fazil Qa'ini, famous teacher and recipient of several tablets from the pen of the blessed beauty of Abha Baha'u'llah. And since we're short of time, I'm not going to go into stories about Nabila Akbar, but we had a wonderful Zoom meeting about Nabila Akbar, and lengthy one. I read a lot of things about him, told stories. Next is Nabila Azam, Nabila Mazandarani, the author of the historical narrative that the beloved guardian called the Dawnbreakers. And as you all know, this title of the book, Dawnbreakers, was a suggestion of beloved hand of the cause. Later, after his passing, the guardian named him hand of the cause, Mr. Townsend, George Townsend, who was originally British. Anyway, Nabila Azam, the author of the narrative of Nabil, has numerous, endless stories, but one is very close to my heart and I'd like to share it with you. When the blessed beauty of Abha Baha'u'llah had gone, he left the Babis and the community of the Babis in Baghdad, and I don't know what to call it, my English is not very good, you'll have to forgive me. He escaped and he went to the mountains of Sulaymaniyah for 2 years, and he lived there as a Darwish. He lived there as Darwish Muhammad. And the beloved Master Abdul Baha sent many messages and begged and pleaded and prayed for Baha'u'llah to come back. And eventually, finally, Baha'u'llah had mercy on the world and he came back from Sulaymaniyah back to Baghdad. But he came back just before Nowruz. And so when in his absence, when the Blessed Beauty was absent in the mountains of Sulaymaniyah, numerous Babis had claimed to be the one that God will make manifest, the Man Yazharullah. They had claimed this because Baha'u'llah's stepbrother Yahya Azal, the arch covenant breaker, had also claimed that the Bab actually gave his life for Yahya, not for the Blessed Beauty Baha'u'llah. And he was claiming to be the promised one, the Mehdi, etc. And so at one point I read, I may be wrong, my memory is failing, I'm not a good student, but I think about 25 of them had claimed to be the one that God will make manifest. And of course they were not. Amongst them was Nabil Azam, the historian. And so when Baha'u'llah came back to Baghdad, it was a rainy day, and of course in those days the ground was not asphalted, and it wasn't paved, with stones or anything. It was just mud. And Nabil was always very clean and he always wore a very white shirt, and he was spotless. This was one of his things. But when he saw Baha'u'llah that had come back from the mountains of Sulaymaniyah, he threw himself to the feet of the Blessed Beauty, to the ground. He didn't care about the mud. And Baha'u'llah said, "Oh, stop that, don't do this." He didn't like people, kissing his feet and his shoes. And he says, "Get away from me, get away from me." A karb, meaning dog. Oh my God! Baha'u'llah called Nabil a dog. And Nabil was about to actually die when Baha'u'llah rejected him. And he said, "Oh, please forgive me." Baha'u'llah says, "You claim to be the Man Yazharullah. I'm so sorry. We didn't, he was apologetic to no end, And Baha'u'llah for the second time said, "But get away from me, you dog." And this time, Nabil was about to actually die. But Baha'u'llah had mercy and compassion. And he touched him on the head, petted him, lifted him up. He says, "But you are a very steadfast, you are a very faithful dog." And so Nabil, he jumped up as if he was in seventh heaven. He started dancing and snapping his fingers and singing. And he said, "Azanam beshahan bovad iftikhar, Baha'im sag khish khonda sebar." He says, "This is why I pride and glory myself above all kings and emperors and sultans, because my Baha has named me his own dog 3 times. Azanam beshahan bovad iftikhar, Baha'im sag khish khonda sebar." Isn't that beautiful? This is why I'm in love with history. So, so that was Nabila Azam. Let's go. Next was Meshkin Qalam, Mirza Hossein Esfahani, noteworthy calligrapher of his time and designer of the greatest name, the Ya Baha'u'llah, among many other imported works. There are numerous works of Meshkin Qalam, and there are many stories about him. Meshkin Qalam was also well known for having a wonderful sense of humor. He was one of the very, very few people who could actually joke with the Blessed Beauty, or the Blessed Beauty Baha'u'llah joked with him. Oh, I wish we had more time and I would tell you so many things about Mishki Ghalam, but I'll tell you one little one. One time, the, a few of them were in the presence of the Blessed Beauty, and Baha'u'llah asked, he says, somebody had asked Baha'u'llah that, how is the next world? And Baha'u'llah says, so you want to see the next world, And when it came to Mishkin Ghalam, he says to the gentleman next to him, he says, tell him I am hard of hearing. I don't hear too well. So, yes, Mishkin Ghalam was very steadfast to the very end. Next is Zain al-Muqarrabin, Mullah Zain al-Abidin, his name was. Baha'u'llah named him Zain al-Muqarrabin, meaning Zain of the beloved ones, of the ones, the dear ones. He was a doctor of Islamic law and was the one who submitted questions to Baha'u'llah regarding the Kitab Mustatab Aqdas, the most holy mother book of Aqdas, the Baha'i book of laws, which have been published in an appendix to the book. So his questions to Baha'u'llah have been published in an appendix to the book. And we had a Zoom meeting about Zain al-Muqarrabin. At some point I may go back and do another one. Next was Kazem Samandar, or Haji Samandar, the favorite apostle of Baha'u'llah, who traveled teaching the faith in Iran, and Lohe Fad is addressed to him. Now, let me tell you a little bit about Haji Samandar. He was the father of the beloved hand of the cause of God, Mr. Tarazullah Samandari, if I'm not wrong. And Haji Samandar took his 16-year-old son, Tarazullah, with him. Samandar was very dear to the Blessed Beauty. I don't know if the beloved friends, you all know what Samandar is or what it means. Let me very quickly and briefly explain. It's a philosophical thing. It's believed that there's a phoenix of love, the immortal phoenix, that is actually made of fire, and it doesn't die when it's in the very heart, the flames of fire. That is a Samandar. And this apostle of Baha'u'llah, who traveled, taught the faith in Iran, as I was saying, he took his son to the Holy Land, to the presence of Baha'u'llah. And there are many beautiful stories. I even have a tape of the voice of the beloved hand of the cause of God, Mr. Tarazullah Samandari, telling stories of when he was in the presence of the Blessed Beauty. Oh, I love Mr. Samandari, and there are photographs of his father, Haji Samandar, and Baha'u'llah actually said you could throw him into the fire and he would not burn. And you could throw him into the sea, in the ocean, and he would not get wet. He was so detached from everything. Next is Haji Amin, or better known as Haji Amin, but his name was Mullah Abul Hassan Ardekani, eminent follower of Baha'u'llah, who served as the trustee of Baha'u'llah. I so love Haji Amin that, without any exaggeration, I lost count of how many times I acted on the stage of Baha'i History Theater as Haji Amin, the trustee of Baha'u'llah. And there are many, infinite stories of Haji Amin, and I hope and pray that you would look him up and read about his life and miraculous, beautiful stories. So we're getting close to the end. Next is Ibn Abhar, or Haji Mirza Muhammad Taqi, appointed by Baha'u'llah as one of the four hands of the cause of God that the Blessed Beauty nominated and appointed as a hand of the cause. Ibn Abhar traveled and taught about the Baha'i faith in countries and regions of Iran, the Caucasus, the Turkmenistan, and India, and a few more far eastern countries like Burma, etc. Next is another beloved hand of the cause of God of Baha'u'llah. Baha'u'llah named Haji Akhund or Haji Mullah Ali Akbar and appointed him a hand of the cause of God, and he was given the task of transferring the remains of the beloved Bab from various secret locations in Iran to Akka. Single-handedly, he carried the big, I don't know what to call it. It wasn't a coffin. It was a chest, you know. He was responsible for much of the Baha'i activities in Iran until his death. And he actually was a member of the very first consultative, I don't know what to call it. It wasn't the National Spiritual Assembly, but it was a group of early Baha'is who had a consultative gathering. And there are many beautiful stories about Haji Akhund, but the most interesting thing that I love about him is that although he was freed from jail, because very often he was incarcerated, he always carried a big log around his ankle with a, you know, they used to have a log and a lock on it and chains. And he had carried that for so long that he became totally accustomed to it and he wouldn't take it off. And you can see his pictures grinning, very happy with the log around the ankle of his right foot. Next is Adib Mirza Muhammad Hassan, appointed by the Blessed Beauty as a hand of the cause of God. After the passing of Baha'u'llah, he became instrumental in dealing with the activities of the covenant breakers in Iran. He later participated in the meetings that evolved into the Central Spiritual Assembly of Tehran, which later became the National Spiritual Assembly of Iran, and he actually was the chairman of it, of which he was the chairman, yes. He traveled to India and Burma to help spread the Baha'i faith in those areas and regions. Next is Mirza Mustafa, served the Baha'is traveling to Akka while living in Beirut on instructions of Baha'u'llah. He also met some of the Bab's letters of the living. And about Mirza Mustafa, there's so many interesting facts that we only have about 15 more minutes left. I'm not going to be able to get into it. Anyway, next is Sheikh Muhammad Ali, the nephew of Nabil Akbar, who traveled to India. Sheikh Muhammad Ali, the nephew of Nabil Akbar, who traveled to India and later Haifa and taught about the Baha'i faith. He was later sent to Ashgabat by Abdul Baha to take care of the education of children there. And along with other followers, he helped in completing the unfinished writings of Mirza Abul Faza'il Golpaygani. And next is Ibn Astaq Mullah Sadiq Muqaddas, entitled Ismullah Aqdas, appointed a hand of the cause after his ascension by the beloved Master Abdul Baha. Next is Mirza Muhammad, appointed by Baha'u'llah as a hand of the cause of God. He was addressed by Baha'u'llah as Shahid ibn Shahid, meaning the martyr, son of a martyr. Now, the reason for that, let me just very quickly explain that he actually desired martyrdom because his father had also been martyred. And the Blessed Beauty said, today, to serve the cause of God is as great as being a martyr. So I recognize you as a martyr because you're a wonderful teacher, like your father who was a martyr. He was the son of Mullah Sadiq, a distinguished martyr of the Baha'i faith. Along with Ahmad Yazdani, Mr. Ahmad Yazdani, who's very well known, they brought the tablet to the Hague in Netherlands, in Holland, from Abdul Baha to the Central Organization of Durable Peace in Hague. He was one of the few apostles to live into the times of the guardianship of the beloved guardian Shawqi Afandi. Next, after that, is Mirza Muhammad Furughi, also known as Fazil Furughi, who was a well-known teacher of the Baha'i faith, often dedicating himself to the welfare of the youth. He was the only Iranian Baha'i teacher who was given the chance to meet face-to-face with the Qajar Shah. He was later identified as one of the 19 Apostles of Baha'u'llah. And I think the last is Vakil Dole. He was an Afnan, a cousin of the beloved Bab. You know, he was the son of the youngest uncle, maternal uncle of the Bab, and the chief builder of the first Baha'i house of worship, the first Mashruq al-Askar in Ashgabad, which was initiated by Abdul Baha in or around 1902. So, because of shortage of time, I have not told you a lot of stories about these wonderful Havariyun, meaning the Apostles of Baha'u'llah. Now, one little note that I'd like to make is that some, not all, some of the Western friends may not be well acquainted with certain words, which is understandable. It's not your language. Some even have a little bit of a trouble hearing too many Persians speak Farsi. That also is understandable. But nevertheless, I'd like to add that the beloved Master, Abdul Baha, urged the Western friends to please try hard and learn Farsi, because it will help you digest and understand and practice the Baha'i faith even more and better. And actually, gladly, thank God and Baha'u'llah, many of the Western friends already do know some Farsi words and concepts. It may be difficult, but all nice things are difficult to achieve. So I encourage you to don't get bored and don't say, oh my God, this is Farsi, oh mommy, I can't bear this. No, grow up, mature, and learn Farsi. You know, you already know about 200 or 300 words in Farsi, each and every one of you. I bet you anything you want. You know Farsi already to a point, but you can improve on it. How many of you don't know what Huququllah is? Or who amongst you does not know what Ya Baha'u'llah or Ya Aliul A'la means or is? Or who doesn't know what Haji is? Or Sayyid is? Or Mirza is? So don't shy away from Farsi. You know, some of us of Iranian origin, myself, I grew up in the Western world, and my Farsi wasn't worth two pennies. But I had to force myself, study it, learn it, improve it. And when my parents went to the Holy Land, to the presence of the beloved guardian, they met a number of Western, American hands of the cause who all spoke Farsi. You know, my dad says that he approached one of the hands of the cause who later became a covenant breaker, Charles Remy Mason, and my dad spoke English and he wanted to speak with him in English. And Charles Remy said in Farsi, he said, talk to me in Farsi. What's this, talking English? And many times that I have been to the Holy Land, my mouth dropped open when I saw these wonderful members of the beloved Universal House of Justice who were not Iranians, but they all spoke Farsi. Did you know that? I can name at least 6 or 7 of them. Mr. Bora Kemalin spoke Farsi. Mr. Ian Simple spoke Farsi, and many others. So it is the holy language, not in Kitab Mehrdad, but in the Kitab of Baha'u'llah. The Blessed Beauty calls it the holy language of Arabic and Farsi, in which God has revealed these twin manifestations in these two languages shall never disappear. Nay, rather, they shall be universally practiced, because the power is in the original revealed word.